Hi, I'm Tim. I am happy to be here. I'm totally new to this fundraising thing. I started 16 months ago at X-Ray FM by doing an incredible amount of research and an incredible amount of documentation and asking people for advice and figuring out what the heck this whole fundraising thing was about. And before that, I was a cheesemonger. So I sold cheese behind a counter to people who generally were a lot richer than me. So I would consider my most important skills in fundraising being personable, having a customer service mindset, and a vast knowledge of cheese. Very important. I'm kidding. I am here to talk about crowdfunding because it's a thing that a lot of people try to do these days, and with mixed success. It's an awesome set of tools. It's a great opportunity to involve large numbers of people easily online with platforms that don't cost thousands of dollars to build or hundreds of dollars to subscribe to, but just charge a percentage, which is cool. It is not, however, magic. Crowdfunding is not magic. That is the central premise that I am going to attempt to talk around today, because crowdfunding is fundraising, and fundraising has a lot of fundamentals that I'm going to share with you today. Many of you already know a lot of this, so I ask you to please avoid snoring if possible. But there's a lot about crowdfunding that amplifies traditional fundraising. And there are a few things about crowdfunding that are kind of unique. If you're going to launch into a crowdfunding campaign, if you're thinking that this is the way to go about raising money, you should be scared, because it's scary, because putting out to the world a big goal and saying, we need to raise this much money, and if we don't, we're not going to be able to do our project, that's scary. That's a fundamentally scary thing. And that means that you shouldn't avoid it. Because whether or not you put it on a crowdfunding website, whether or not you go out there and tell the world, this is my goal, and succeed or fail, I'm going to shoot for it, that's still the reality of the situation. You're still dealing with that same scary reality of having to raise the same support. So accept that fear. And the way that you accept that fear is in a few specific ways. First of all, there are a lot of crowdfunding websites out there. So picking the right one for you is important. However, I have a certain personal bias that I will share. I like Kickstarter and websites like it that are all or nothing. I like websites where if you don't raise the amount of money that you shoot for, you get $0. I think that that is a better model for fundraising, and I'll tell you why. When a donor sees that you're $300 short of your goal, and you have 3 days left, if it's on a website where it's not all or nothing, where, well, you're going to get all of the money except for that $300, they have very little motivation to do anything about that. They've already given, they've already shared, they've done their part. You get a little less money, but you'll still be able to figure it out. If you don't get any money, that donor who has already bet on you, who has already taken the emotional hit and said, okay, I'm going to give up some of my hard-earned money, I care about this project happening, I really want it to happen desperately because I've bet on it, they're going to share it more to their friends. They're going to dig a little deeper, give 10, 20, 30, in some cases $100 more. And they're going to push you through the end. And that's why you see this. The number of supporters over time. In a crowdfunding campaign, you're going to get 50% of your total support in the first 3 days and the last 3 days. So most of your support is going to come in the beginning when you first started sharing it, and there are ways to maximize that, and I'll discuss that. And then at the end, right before it's over. This is especially true for campaigns that, at day 25 haven't met their goal yet. Because people who care about the campaign, if it's close, are going to push really hard to get through it. Another thing about this funny little curve, this dead zone is going to account for about the same amount of money in your campaign, no matter the length of your campaign, generally. What do I mean by that? You're going to get most of your money in the first in the last 3 days if you have a 30-day campaign or if you have a 90-day campaign. Which means that this space in here, whether it's 24 days long or 84 days long, is going to be the same amount of money. People find, generally, that when they're raising money on Kickstarter, on Indiegogo, on anything, they raise the same amount or slightly more money with shorter campaigns. Longer campaigns are, in my opinion, and as a rule, based on the data that I looked into, they're a way of running away from the scary thing. They're a way of saying, well, if I can't make it by 30 days, maybe I can make it by 90 days. That, in my opinion, is a lie that we tell ourselves. Because the hard work of making the campaign successful needs to come before the campaign. And if you didn't do the hard work, 90 days isn't going to make you more successful than 30 days. It's going to give you more chances to get lucky, maybe, but the hard work should come before. And a shorter campaign is also good for a lot of reasons. Campaigns are fatiguing. They should be. Campaigns are hard. Campaigns draw on your social capital. You're asking your network. You're asking them. And the longer you ask, the more times you have to ask to keep the campaign in people's awareness, the more you draw on your social capital, and the harder it's going to be 3 months down the line when you need to ask for money again to do whatever. You're expanding your program, you're building a commercial kitchen, you're making more burritos. If you have a 30-day campaign, let's say you start on January 1st, well, January 30th or January 31st, you're done. You fulfill all the rewards, you thank everybody. By the end of March, people might be willing to hear, I need money again. If you have a 90-day campaign, you will have made the same amount of money, but you won't be able to ask people until July. So the total amount of money that you raise over the year is going to be lower, because you're all part of projects that don't just need money once. You need money to sustain yourselves, to keep going.
One thing that I've noticed that's a little bit counter to that is that there's a lot of groups right now that are using an ongoing campaign that doesn't have a limit as a way of having a donate button.
Yes.
They're using it for ongoing fundraising as well. It's not just, we need $1,000 for this goal. It's, we need $20 and $20 and $20. So they use GoFundMe because it doesn't have a limit on campaign length, so that they have that donate button so that people can easily give them funds. And I think it's important to distinguish between ongoing fundraising and campaign-based fundraising.
I agree with you. And that's actually a reason why I think that tools like GoFundMe or Indiegogo are not ideal for ongoing fundraising. There are other tools that you can use that are inexpensive. And actually there are some free tools as long as you have a bank account where you can get a donate button that will cost less than the 6% that most crowdfunding sites charge you. So I would recommend, if you are looking for ongoing fundraising, to find a non-crowdfunding tool, because the campaign ones are worth it because they give you this thermometer. That's another thing, is crowdfunding is awesome because it gives you a thermometer. Have people heard the word gamification before?
Say it again?
Gamification?
Gamification?
Gamification. Turning things into games. It can be as simple as I click on a button and a little bar goes up. That's what a lot of video games are based on. That's what a lot of human activity looks like, is based on. When you fundraise and they click the donate button and they see a little bar go up and they see a little counter go up, that gives them a little jolt, a little thrill. They're like, I contributed to something. I see how I contributed instantly. And that is part of the advantage of crowdfunding. So yes, shorter campaigns, almost always better. All or nothing, in my opinion, tends to work better. There's another reason why you should do all or nothing fundraising. So let's say you have a campaign that requires $2,000. If you don't have $2,000, you can't do the thing you promised to do. Well, what happens if you raise $1,000? You have now promised to $1,000 worth of people that you would do a thing that you now can't do. So now you have to build a new fundraising strategy, launch a new campaign, figure out all the nuts and bolts of this all over again, just so that you can do this thing that you said you were going to do before. There's a freedom in all or nothing fundraising, because if you don't raise that $2,000, you then are not doing the thing, or at least not using crowdfunding money. So you haven't taken people's money and then promise them a thing that you then can't do. So that's another reason.
Isn't that pretty understood, though? I mean, I know that in a lot of big business, they receive donations or fundings for projects, and then those projects don't end up happening, and they still receive the money. I think that that's a pretty understood risk of offering money to a situation. I don't know if that's necessary. I mean, I could see there could be some moral high ground around not taking someone's money and not using it for a specific thing, but I mean, it's, you know, in big business, I think that people often take it and use it to go on a vacation in the tropics. But I mean, if we're talking about people who are working in community action, it's not like they're going to, you know, take everybody out to dinner. They're probably still going to use it for a good thing. So it seems like that's kind of an understood.
So when it's business, that's money talking to money, and money knows how to account for risk factors. Money doesn't depend on trust and reputation as much as a human being. Most crowdfunding campaigns and most individual donations to nonprofits and social good organizations are not a person saying, I want to create this change in the world, I will give X% of that, and I anticipate a 20% risk of that not happening. That's how money thinks. Human beings rely on the ability to trust each other and say, I'm an organization. When I say I'm going to do a thing, I do it. When I say I'm not going to do a thing, I don't do it. And if you build that reputation, particularly online, but also in your local communities, people will be more likely to fund you in the future. And so getting a bunch of money and then not being able to do the thing you said you were going to do makes you less able to get money in the future. The same is true in business. If people give you $20,000 and you fail to make the improvements to your infrastructure that you promised to make, you're going to be less able to get $20,000 in the future.
I just don't, in actuality, I don't find that true in my experience, but perhaps it's different for different people.
I think art is more forgiving than project-based social justice. I have seen people get burned pretty hard by that. So, do we have any questions now, since I'm doing the scary part? Any questions?
So you said the difference between a 30-day campaign and a 90-day campaign. Do you recommend 30 or
30.
What about a 10-day campaign?
So there is a lower limit in most people's experience because. So the stages, I'll get to the lead up and like the stages of a crowdfunding campaign in a minute. But for the moment, I'll say let's put a bookmark on that. And yes, there is a lower limit.
Okay.
The next.
Is there a difference between a GoFundMe campaign and a crowdfunding campaign, or is GoFundMe part of crowdfunding?
GoFundMe is part of crowdfunding.
Okay.
So it's one type of crowdfunding platform. There are pages and pages and pages of information on the web that you can research. So look around the world. Look around the country for people who have done campaigns similar to yours. Look at their social media presence. How many likes do they have? How many followers do they have? Look at their email newsletters. See if you can find out how many subscribers they have. By doing this and looking at similar campaigns that have already happened around the country, you can estimate how much you could expect to raise. Because people are different and communities are different, but when you take a lot of data together and you average it, you tend to get similar results. And so that's what we did at X-Ray. I should say, we launched with a crowdfunding campaign. It was super awesome. We tried to get $40,000 and we got $100,000. Oops. And it was mostly as a result of an explosive response of the community, but also a lot of research and planning. It's crazy how much research and planning we did. And that's the main part of this Crowdfunding Isn't Magic shtick, is that research and plan and calendar and research and plan and put things on a calendar and tell everyone about it ahead of time. You should recognize that fundraising is about relationships, that the way that you get people to give you money is by having them trust you, because otherwise why would they do that? And having them like you, and having them believe in your project. We'll move on to the next set, setting the goal. How do you go about setting what goal you're trying to raise towards? In some cases, this is obvious, because you need a thing and it costs this much, and So you need to plan towards that. In other cases, it's not obvious at all. Like, we needed to start a radio station. Well, we raised and spent $300,000 this year, but that doesn't mean that our crowdfunding campaign should be $300,000, because we would never, ever succeed there. That doesn't even mean that our crowdfunding campaign should be $100,000, even though that's what we raised, because we would have failed to raise it if we tried to raise $100,000. The only reason we succeeded in raising $100,000 is because we asked for 40. Now, that sounds counterintuitive, but the main reason for that is that people want to back things that they believe will succeed. While in all or nothing fundraising, they're not technically risking anything by offering you their support. They're actually risking this belief and emotional energy is a finite resource. It's not a thing that people have infinite amounts of. And so when they spend that on you, they are depleted. And so they're more likely to say, I don't know if I'm going to put my heart into that if it has 10% funding than if it has 30% funding. Here's a key metric. 90% of the projects that reach 30% of their funding goal succeed. So if you're trying to raise $1,000, if you succeed in raising $300, you have a 9 out of 10 chance in succeeding. This is especially true if you raise it early. And I'll get to reasons why that's the case and how you can help doing that in a minute. But if you can, setting your goal for sort of nebulous projects where you need a good amount of money, whatever happens, set it to 3 times the amount that you're really, really confident you can get from people whose names you know and who have promised to give you money already. Because if you set your goal to 3 times what people have pledged you, then you will hit that 30%, and then you will be 90% likely to succeed. And that's a good plan. That's how good campaign-based fundraising works. The other part is to get pre-pledges. Get raisers, get people who are going to help you out. What does that mean? So when I was planning the X-Ray Kickstarter, what we did was there were a bunch of people who were volunteering, a bunch of people who were like the music director, or DJs, or they were talk show hosts, or they were doing a bunch of stuff. And I went to each of them and I said, how much money do you think you can raise for this campaign? How much money do you think, not you personally can give, although in some cases that was the question if they were of greater means. Mostly it was, how many people do you think you can get to give $25, $50, $100 to the campaign? And we had each of them set a goal, and then we tracked those goals on a big, colorful spreadsheet, and I would call and I would email people to see how they were doing on their goal as they headed towards the campaign. And as that happened, I got a more clearer and clearer idea of the amount of money we might be able to raise. Because that pre-preparation, that getting people to promise me to raise a certain amount of money, that was the key, that was the core. Because email lists are great, Facebook is great, Twitter is actually not very useful for fundraising as it turns out. But what really drives fundraising is people texting each other, calling each other, meeting each other at parties, and talking to their neighbors, putting together house parties, raising money by asking people directly, hey, will you give money to this campaign? How about right now? That's another key thing. If people tell you that they're going to give you money later, most of the time they are lying to you. This is not because they are bad people, and this is not because they think they are lying to you, but they will forget because it's hard to remember. And so you should close the deal as soon as you can.
You say you engage other people in the campaign to raise money. Do you make them separate teams, co-funders on the campaign side, or do you just have them direct their contacts to the main site?
They direct their contacts to the main site. The fewer steps you can put into a process, the more money you're going to raise as a rule. Because at every step of the way, a certain percentage of people are going to fail to follow through. And so the fewer steps, the less failure rate there is. That's another thing, is all of these projects are deeply personal to us. To a certain extent, you kind of have to not take the fundraising too personally, because people are going to forget, and people are going to not give before the end of the campaign because they didn't realize it was ending for some reason, even though you told them 10 times. and people are going to not give as much as, in your opinion, you think they will be able to give. So don't let your heart break over that, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen a lot, and that's okay. We have an email list of about 5,000 people, about 6,000 Facebook followers, and well under 5% of those people have ever given us anything. So, yeah, don't let that break your heart. They still love you. Let me see. Any other questions? I want to open the floor real quick. Yes?
So how did you decide on $40,000?
Because we were confident in the promises of people who said that they would get us about $15,000. And 40 sounded like a nice round number as opposed to 45. Because beforehand, we found people who said, yes, I will give you $2,000. Yes, I will raise $500 for my friend group. Yes, I will give you, $500, whatever. And that totaled out to about $15,000, so we set it for 40. Because we were confident that in the first 3 days of the campaign, we could tell all those people who promised us that money, all right, we need to get to a third of our funding goal in the next 3 days, so that everyone else, when they come across the campaign, are confident that it's going to succeed because it looks like it has momentum. People tend to respond better as a rule to, hey, look at this really cool thing that a bunch of people are into, you should get involved, than nobody is helping out, we really need your help because you're the only one who can be a hero to us. It's sad, but it's also true in a large scale. On the statistical average, people prefer to be involved in popular projects that look like they're going to succeed, as opposed to save projects that look like they aren't. So it's important in the first few days to get to a substantial amount of your funding goal. That means that crowdfunding starts 3 months before you click go on your campaign. So you need to be planning 3 or more months beforehand. You need to talk to the people in your network, whether that's social network or email network or the people who you meet every day, and those will be your most powerful supporters. And you need to say, on this date, 3 months hence, I will launch a crowdfunding campaign. So, are you with me? Great, you're with me. What does that mean? I need you to send this email that I have drafted for you to all of your friends. I need you to post this link that I have provided for you along with some text on your Facebook feed on this date, 3 months from now. And then 2 months from now say, remember, you said you would do that. I need you to do that. It's tiring. It makes you have to ask your friends for things over and over and be annoying. And also, it allows beautiful things to come into the world and social justice to be advanced and people to all come together in a way that they can afford to create large-scale change. Because the only way we're going to do this is if we all come together.
2 questions. First one is, am I going to ask my friend to give before I launch it, or tell them to give at the day of launch?
At the day of launch.
And then my second question is, what if I don't have a large network? Is this not the right tool for me?
Depends on your project. Because everyone who's involved in the project, everyone who cares about Opportunity Village in this case, the total network of people that they can touch and that an email or a Facebook message or a phone call or a text, the total number of people for whom that provides an emotional response is probably well in excess of 10,000 people. And so you should view your network not necessarily as your personal network, but as your project network. X-Ray FM would not have succeeded if it had to rely on my network. Like, my friends are broke. we don't have any money, and I struggled to meet my personal goals. I succeeded, but it was a struggle. But there were people in the station who had a lot of friends or a few really rich friends or whatever. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, when you start getting these people to say, yes, we're going to donate, and we know that date, did you know who you were going to go through before you started that process?
This is sort of core fundraising. When you're dealing with large numbers of people, you make a list of everyone who you think you would be willing to ask for money. And then you look at that list and you realize it's too short, and then you make yourself comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, and then you make the list a little longer. And then you go through and you check off those people.
Right, but that's not my question. My question is, did you know you were going to go to Kickstarter or GoFundMe or that before you started making your list and
Yes.
getting those donations?
Yes.
Okay, that's,
Yeah.
thank you.
I knew that I was going to launch a crowdfunding campaign.
Right.
I didn't know exactly how much money it was going to be, but I
Right.
knew I was going to launch a crowdfunding campaign.
But, and you knew who? It was going to be Indiegogo, it was going to be Kickstarter. That's
Yeah.
what I'm asking.
Yeah, typically yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
How much do these crowdfunding sites charge for?
Between 3 and 6%. And so if you're talking about a $2,000 campaign, as an example, that's going to be between $30 and $60. So it's not a big deal that Kickstarter charges 9% actually, if you're not raising like $50,000. Because they charge more because Amazon takes a cut and because they're the most popular. But they also lend legitimacy to a campaign on them, and they make people trust it, because when you say I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign, people have a less clear idea in their heads of what that is. If you say I'm doing a Kickstarter, they have a slightly more clear ideas. I tend to prefer using the large branded service, but opinions differ.
Sorry, along with that question, so are the donors giving directly, say, to the 501c3 organization, are they only going to get part of that as the tax deductible amount or the whole amount that they give?
So it depends on if they choose to get a reward or not. They're going to get the whole amount that they give minus the fair market value of any goods or services they receive as a reward. If they say, no, I don't want a reward, or if you're not offering rewards, which is totally possible, then they will get the full amount that they give. Transaction fees are considered on the side of the nonprofit, and the donor doesn't have to worry about that. Anyone? Cool. So that's the lead up, the way that you get into the crowdfunding campaign 3 months ahead of time is going to involve a lot of calendaring, a lot of writing lists of people, and a lot of spreadsheets. The way that I like to, and I've been taught to think about fundraising on large scales, is a pyramid. So I'm going to keep picking on Burrito Brigade because you have a currently live one. Let's do the fundraising pyramid real quick for Burrito Brigade. What is the most money, the highest number that you could imagine somebody saying yes to? Like single donation. You ask a person and they say yes. Anybody. What's the highest number?
$1,500.
$1,500. Great. So, $1,500 is your top brick. You probably only expect to get one of those, right? Right. So, $1,500 is your top brick. What do you think, how many people do you think you could ask for $100? How many people do you think would say yes to $100?
Maybe 30.
30. Great. So then, times 1, times 30. How many people do you think would say yes to $50? And that's separate from the hundreds.
Separate, yeah.
50.
Okay, so 50, yeah.
Okay. How many people do you think would say yes to 25?
Probably 50 again.
Okay, that sounds right to me. How many people would say yes to 10, in your opinion?
50.
50, yeah. That sounds like what I've experienced as well. And how many people would say yes to $1?
50.
50. Yep, that sounds right to me. So this provides a few important lessons. First of all, asking people is the hardest part. Because if the same number of people are going to say yes to $1 or $50, and that doesn't sound insane to me, asking people is the hard part. So you need to ask a lot of people. The second thing is that you're trying to raise $2,000. This is a lot more than $2,000. You could probably try to raise more. When you're building this fundraising pyramid, this is how you should be thinking about it, is how many people at what level? You're going to need a lot of people at the low level if you can only imagine someone giving you $500. If it's $500 is your top, and then 100 you expect 10 people to give you that much, and then 50 you expect 5 people to give you that much, or maybe 20 people, that means that you have to ask a lot more people for less money. So figuring this out, going through this exercise, tells you what kind of campaign you're running. Are you talking to a few people to attempt to get these really valuable top bricks? Or are you talking to a huge number of people and trying to get a lot of these less valuable but numerous bottom bricks? So that's how I would recommend thinking about how you're going to structure your campaign and how you're going to structure your asks. Questions?
Well, go ahead. He's aiming at both of us.
Go ahead.
In my campaign experience, it's kind of a bell curve, like many other things. My large donors were very few, and almost nobody gave me below $25. And the $25 campaign were very few. So there's kind of a popular range. And of course, it depends on the audience you're reaching out to. So I'm sure that if you're a really broad spread, you might find a lot of 10, and I never saw a $1 donation, but
$1 donations have become traditional in the crowdfunding world because you give $1 and that gives you access to the updates that are private to backers. And so you get these extra special secret emails, and so some people just pay in for that amount.
I just haven't seen it in my experience, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, and maybe it's the average of the rule, but in 2 campaigns I've been involved with, I never received anything under 25.
Awesome.
No, one campaign I had 2 donors at $10.
Okay.
But I also had 2 at 200, so it really made a curve. It was somewhere between 25 and 200 that was popular. 50 and 100 are really common.
50 and 100 are super duper common. It depends on the campaign, but most people make the majority of their money at either the $50 or the $100 level. That's not to say they have the most donors at that level, but that's where they make the most money, because you need 10 times the number of $10 donors to make the same amount of money as a $100 donor. So you can expect that the majority of your money will happen in the $100 to $50 range.
Does it make sense to set a bottom limit? Like, we're asking for 10 to 1,000.
Yeah.
So that, people sort of, come in, go in with the idea of I'm going to cough up $10 or I'm going to cough up $25 or, is there more loss than gain in that, or have people tried that?
It depends on what your reward structure is. If you're offering rewards, you want to offer things that are really cheap and easy to produce and distribute if you're going to be offering them for small amounts of money. So, for example, if you have a PDF that you can email to somebody and that's their reward, then maybe you have a $5 reward level. If everything that you're going to offer people, or every interaction that you're going to have with them is going to cost a fair amount of time and money, then you probably should set the low bar at like 10 or 20, because otherwise you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy, and you're not going to get a lot of fundraising out of it. One thing I would add is people are 10 to 20% more likely in most cases, in most studies, to choose the second or third item from the bottom of a list when it's ordered by price. So you want to have a reward level or a backer level or like a suggested level that is lower than you want people to go, so that they will go for the one above it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
People are not likely to choose the bottom, the least expensive one. They're more likely to choose something above that. I hadn't planned on focusing on rewards because it's not strictly necessary in social good campaigns, but I can go into more at the end if you're interested. But you had a question that I want to answer.
So specifically, there's a piece of property that we're looking to purchase, and there's 2 of them, and we've kind of gone back and forth between them. And one of them is in a situation right now where if we want to move on it, we need to move on it quickly. And so my question, I have a couple of questions. A situation where we would specifically, we could use something like this through the multiple networks to fundraise for the specific property that has a, like, kind of a time awareness around it. But if that money wasn't collected, like if that property sold or something happened to it in the meantime, we could use it for the other property. So it would be one of those things, and it's a large amount, you know, it's upwards of $300,000. We could probably try to raise something around that. So, you know, we definitely would want to do something where if we didn't reach our marker, we'd still be able, you know, if we got $250,000, that would still be sufficient to put the down payment on either of the pieces and move forward. And then my other question is, is there any kind of like anonymous, like how is the donation made? Does it have to go from like bank account to bank account? Is there any way for people to offer money through a crowdfunding campaign that isn't directly traceable, or is it all?
Yeah, totally.
Bitcoin is one example.
Bitcoin is one example. Depends. So the answers to both of those questions are going to depend on the platform that you choose. Some platforms have words in their terms of service that kind of contractually obligate you to spend the money on the thing that you're going to spend it on. Others don't. And so if they don't have those words, then it's a question of relationship and trust with the people who are giving you money. In your case, it sounds like probably that they would consider that a good faith expense. But you could get in legal trouble if you don't read the terms of service, so I'd recommend that. The other thing is also depends on the crowdfunding platform. Some offer direct bank transfer. Most, it's a credit card, which does have your name attached to it, but only in the like deep back end of Amazon's payment system. And people can make an email address that's fundamentally anonymous and then donate through that. So they can be anonymous if they want to. I would say, as a comment on what you were saying, if I had to make a recommendation, it would be to figure out what the smallest amount of money you could possibly do the down payment for is and make that your goal. Whatever the absolute minimum is, because you're much more likely to raise double that if you start with the smaller number.
Not triple it?
You know, sometimes. That goes back to the crowdfunding is not magic. Your campaign will not go viral. It will not happen. Some do. You can never count on that. The internet is mysterious and crazy. And what is popular and what is shared is, like, it has to be relatively well made or on certain subjects, but you can't count on it. The potato salad guy who made $64,000 for potato salad, he got randomly lucky. It's like the lottery, basically. It's like buying a lottery ticket and expecting it to win. But good fundamentals in fundraising can get you to your goal, even if it doesn't get shared everywhere and spread everywhere.
So, I don't understand the $64,000.
He said, I want to make potato salad, and it was a joke, and a bunch of people thought it was a really funny joke, and gave him like $20 or $30 each. Thousands of people.
You asked for like $5 or $6. Like,
Yeah, it was.
it's just a couple dollars for everything.
So
Why didn't he just say, thank you, this is enough, and then just stop?
is there ever enough potato salad?
Yeah.
Was it the $64 question?
Yeah.
He threw a big festival, that guy. It was I'm pretty sure it was in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah,
he was there that weekend. He ended up taking like most of that money and threw a potato salad festival in the big city park, like a huge community event, which is great. And that wasn't his plan at the beginning, but he was like, well, everybody gave me this money, I guess I'll do something fun.
So I've covered some of the lead-up bit. I'd like to address another way of thinking about fundraising that I've also found useful. This is mostly for people who have larger amounts of money, but when you're hunting for the top of your fundraising pyramid, this is the most useful way I've heard to do this if you're a good guesser. So put a name down. Let's say Peter DeFazio. Let's say that for some reason you think that Peter DeFazio would be interested in maybe supporting your campaign. You say, I'm going to ask Peter DeFazio for $1,000. And I think that there is a 10% chance that he will say yes. That means that in my spreadsheet, Peter DeFazio is worth $100, 10% of 1,000. I put names and probabilities and ask amounts on that list, until the total number is equal to or greater than what I need to raise from people in those large funding categories. And if you're a good guesser, you're going to get pretty close to right, actually. So that's just one thought of how to organize your major donor asks, is by percent chance that they're going to say yes to a given value. It's called expected values fundraising.
So what happens if you have your experience, your radio station, which is in Portland, and we have our radio station here in Eugene, and I come to you and I say, is this something that your supporters could support here in Eugene?
So cross fundraising between lists is controversial and difficult in nonprofits, because one thing that the resource that most nonprofits hold most dearly is their fundraising list. Not that it's a secret, but rather that they have this relationship that they say that they've gone to their funders over and over and over and say, okay, we're doing this thing on this subject that you clearly care about because you keep giving us money. How about helping us? Every ask that you make of a list depletes its value as a rule. So you will find it difficult to get a lot of yeses. In this specific case, I think I know some people who you would want to talk to, including some of the people at X-Ray. But in general, getting nonprofits to fundraise for each other is tough. Keep lists. Make plans. When you're making a plan to crowdfund, and you say, "Oh, I'm going to email these people." Well, who's going to write the email? Great. How is it going to get sent out? Who is going to send it out? Keep asking these who, how, what questions until you have answered every possible question, and then you should show it to a person who is experienced in the matter. They should look at that plan, and then they should ask you questions that you forgot to ask. Because collaborating and getting other people's feedback and getting other people's experience and the benefit of it is so great. And sometimes when you reach out to people on Kickstarter who have had successful campaigns, or GoFundMe or Indiegogo or whatever, you'll get them to say yes. They'll say, "Oh, yeah, let me look at this. Oh, great. Awesome. Looks good." If you're going to make a major ask of someone, like sending an email to their list or supporting you financially, here's a funny thing. If you want money, ask someone for advice. If you want advice, ask someone for money. That's not totally true, but asking for advice is a good way to cue up the conversation about them financially or in some more major way supporting you, because once they've spent the time and emotional energy to give you that advice, they care about you and they want you to succeed. Oh yeah, spread the word well ahead of time. That's really key. So successful crowdfunding campaigns, everybody who cares about that issue already knows that they're going to be launched a month ahead of time. So the posting on Facebook often has the message, okay, in a week, go. Okay, in 3 days, go. And then on the day that it launches, on the day that they're actually going to be raising money, then they get the actual trigger to go. But if people only realize that you're crowdfunding on the day that it starts, you're in a rough spot, because you're not going to get to that 30% that you needed in the first 3 or 4 days, so that anyone who stumbles across it later thanks to shares is going to have confidence that it's going to succeed, and so have confidence to give their money and their energy and their effort to it. Any questions? No? Great. Write down calendars, be really explicit about everything. Messaging. Okay. I want to call out the Burrito Brigade again on this, because I researched your last crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo. I really liked the way you started it. I thought that it was an effective messaging. The key is that people tend to support things not based on a value proposition as much as why you're doing it. So why do you care about this thing that you're going to make happen? Why is it important? Why? That's why. That's why you should go and support the campaign. That should be in big bold letters at the top of your campaign in every message. Like for the Burrito Brigade, too many people are hungry in a place and a time where food is abundant, and all it takes is community organization and belief and a little bit of money on the side to make it happen. Why, for Opportunity Village, if you don't have a place to sleep and to live and a place to feel safe and supported in a community, you're going to keep having the same problems. And so if you have ever complained about a panhandler, if you have ever complained about somebody on the bus who you don't approve of for whatever reason, you should be supporting this campaign because you're building the world that you would rather live in, and complaining about it is not going to do anything. So why people should support your campaign, what the world looks like when they do, that's how you start. That's the beginning, middle, and end. So X-ray, I'll use this as an example. I could say we believe that it's a good idea for Portland to have an independent radio station that will play the voices and sounds of the community, that will play music and progressive politics, and that will play the things that you wouldn't otherwise hear on the radio, and that will put a microphone to the best and most distinctive of our city. I could say that. I could talk about what. And a lot of people like to hear about that, and you will need to tell them that. But actually what I should be telling them is there are 26 FM radio stations in Portland. 20 of them are owned by multinational conglomerates. We believe that there is space on the radio dial for something beautiful and uniquely Portland. We believe that radio should be owned by the people. It technically is, but it really doesn't seem like it anymore. We believe that there are voices and sounds that are being shut out. So why do we get up in the morning? Why do we accept very little pay and a long, long, stressful work hours? Because we believe that this is worth doing. This is our mission, and so that's why we're doing it. And so that's what we lead with. That's what we start our video with. We don't say, here's the product we're going to offer you, isn't it awesome? We say, here's why this thing that we're doing, here's why we get up in the morning. So that's a good way to start.
So do you think that's unique?
No, I think that you should always start with why it matters.
For your particular radio station.
You mean the consolidation of media issue? Yeah. No, that's a national issue, and international to a large extent. That's a huge issue everywhere. So that's a good. You should take a look at how many radio stations in the Eugene market are community versus clear channel communications specifically. There's a structure that we can use for messaging. It's called ANSVA. I've written it down here. Attention, need, visualization, or attention, need, satisfaction, visualization, action. It's a good way if you're making a video or making a presentation, or typically people use it for public speaking, but it works for a lot of types of public storytelling. That you start with something to get their attention. Sometimes it's a joke. Sometimes it's a cartwheel. Sometimes it's a really recognizable thing. Sometimes it's a little girl walking around with a microphone. Something unexpected, something that will break them, that will go, hey, what's that about? Because in this world where we have more content delivered to our phones than a human being could ever read in their lifetime, what you're actually competing for is people's attention. And once you have their attention, then you might be able to get them to care enough to give you money or share your project. But first you have to get their attention. Need, this is why. Why does this need to happen? So describe the problem, describe the thing that you're trying to solve. Satisfaction, how are you going to satisfy this need? How is this thing that you are doing going to resolve in some part that problem? How is the burrito brigade going to feed people? It's an obvious answer, but you need to answer that question. How is this radio station going to give more voice to the community? Satisfaction. Visualization. What will the world look like if our mission is successful? Imagine this new world where things are better based on our mission, based on our objectives. Imagine this new world where people can tune in and hear voices from their community talking about stuff that matters. Imagine this new world where people can be housed in a place of safety and respect that's generated by the community. And then action. always end with a do this, share this, give money here, tell a friend, show up to this event. You always have to tell people to do something, because if you don't tell them, they won't know what to do. it's really simple. And the ask can be super duper simple, like support us, show up at this day at the park, volunteer with us. Whatever it is, you need to ask them to do a thing, because otherwise you will have made what's called a branding message. They'll feel generally positive about your campaign, but they won't necessarily do anything about it unless it occurs to them that, oh yeah, I guess I should probably do this thing. And only 75% of people are going to do that without you reminding them, which means you're losing a quarter of people. And that sucks. So that's ANSVA. It's like corporate speak and like business self-help book speak, but it's a really useful structure for getting people to like listen to you, care about what you're saying, be able to clearly visualize what you're saying. That's another thing. Visuals, imagery, videos, visual language. Imagine this, picture this, this is what this will look like. There's a reason why in the State of the Union address and in like every political debate, people and politicians, even though this isn't the thing that's important, they use individual examples. They say, and Martha from the Midwest had her job destroyed because of overregulation by the FDA or whatever, because you're allowing people to visualize the impact of this larger process. So imagine this person who was hungry every day and wasn't able to concentrate on the schooling that they were supposed to receive because they're hungry and they're going to school hungry and they're not able to keep up in their classes because they have to think about where they're going to get food. Well, we solved that problem, and so little Billy Joe is able to now succeed in school, and little Billy Joe is able to get back to his community afterwards. Concrete visualization, super good. It's kind of silly that it works that way, but it really does. Question?
What about image versus video on your crowdfunding?
Whenever humanly possible, make a video. If you can, make a video. Make it short. 3 minutes and less. 3 minutes would be a long video. Ours was about 3, and some people said, it was a little long. People's attention spans are diminishing rapidly. Make a video, 3 minutes or less. Use the ANSVA structure. Attention, need, satisfaction, visualization, action in the video. Fill in each of those categories and then write a script based on that.
So is the video linked? I mean, it doesn't, or does it automatically open up? Do you know what I mean?
So in most platforms, the way it works is that your campaign will have a page, and at the top of that page in the center, immediately when people navigate to it, is the video. And in many cases, when you link your campaign on social media, Facebook, Twitter, what have you, then that video will be the thing that shows up in people's feeds, and then it will have a link to the campaign at the end of the video so they can click through and donate. So generally, that's how it works. Again, it'll depend on the platform. Yeah, that's another thing. Videos are great. You should ideally really have one because for whatever reason, people are much more likely to share videos between their friends. Yeah, articles, blog posts with images, great. Anything you post should have an image on social media. Any email you send should have an image, but videos are even better because they are many images all strung together. Any other questions? Cool. I'm going to go on to marketing your project. Again, plan. You need to know when you're going to send emails during your project 2 months before your project launches, ideally. So if you're looking at this, to get back to this, you can make there be little bumps if you plan really well, if you coordinate well, which will raise the overall amount you get, because people tend to give right after updates. People tend to share right after updates. People tend to email people right after updates because they're reminded. So know when you're going to update things. Know when you're going to send emails to what lists. Get people to promise that on this date, 2 weeks into the campaign, I will send an email to this community organization that I'm a part of, or this neighborhood council is going to have a meeting on the subject, so I can expect that there will be a bump at this time. Plan out bumps. Look at every date during your campaign and say, okay, I can expect the first few days to be really good because I've gotten everyone to pre-pledge and push all their friends there on that day. I can expect the last few days to be good because that's just how it works. But how do I make these days good in the middle? That's with emails. That's with updates. You need to keep people's attention on your campaign, otherwise they will forget about it.
With our last campaign that we ran, which was pretty much just for tortillas, I started noticing we were getting multiple $13.95 donations a day, and I thought it was super weird. I was looking into it, I'm like, how are we getting like 5 $13.95 a day? And the Eugene Foodies Facebook page is a huge supporter of ours, and one of the admins had posted, most of you spend $13.95 on one meal, but if you spend $13.95 with Burrito Brigade, then you are purchasing 40 tortillas for people who are hungry. And I just thought that that was a genius way to get people to donate, like getting really creative with what you're asking for.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's another thing. Oh, excellent example. You should ask people for things that they can picture in their head. So like, here's $13.95. It gets 40 tortillas. I am buying 40 tortillas for this organization. If I give $10 to this organization, I have purchased a 10 by 10 tarp. If I give $50 to this organization, I have purchased a high quality set of PVC piping to create a temporary structure. I have purchased these specific things for the organization. Afterwards, this is apropos to your question actually, you don't need to spend it on that specific thing. They just know that when they picture it in their head, they can say, I did this for these people, for this social good. We tell people, give us $5,000. That's what it costs to buy a transmitter. And we have gotten more than 3 people to give us $5,000 because that's what it costs to buy a transmitter. And they all know that we're asking more than 3 people. But they still want to picture something in their head and say, I am contributing in this specific and necessary way. Let's see. Yeah, concrete calendar. I would add on to that, actually, the $13.95 thing. In an ideal world, you would have planned that with them. And so, just in the same way that when you make a list of all the people that you could ask for money, also make a list of all the people that you could ask for communications support ahead of time, and ask them and say, I need your help promoting the campaign. When does your monthly newsletter go out? Here's a link. Here's some what they call copy, but it's just text to put in your email. And then I go back and I put that on my calendar, and I know exactly when people are going to send an email, and I know what to expect, and I know what questions to have to answer. And yeah, so ahead of time, look in your community, get everyone in your project together, ask them who would care about this, who should I contact, and only in that way will you get a good survey of who you can expect to promote your campaign for you. Because individuals are great, organizations are even better. In the same way that you should have an idea of who can promote it for you, you should also have an idea of what your channels are. And when I say channel, I mean like, this is how many Facebook followers I have. This is how many Twitter followers I have, although Twitter sucks for fundraising. Can't emphasize that enough. Except in very specific cases. How many emails do I have on my list? How many Facebook friends do I have who I can send individual emails or Facebook messages to and will probably respond? Map out all your channels. Count up the number of people. Look at, on average, how many of each of those people respond when you do a thing. So when you send an email that says, hey, check out this video on YouTube. What do you think? See how many views that gets. Then you'll know how many people responded via that channel. And then make a different video. Do that with your Facebook people. And you'll see how many people. Facebook makes it easy with insights and like marketing tracking stuff, but yeah, you should have someone on your team who cares about numbers for the sake of numbers, because they will help you think about things in a systematic way. I am not that person on my team, but I really appreciate them. Let's see. Build your list. One of the best opportunities that you have to build your email list, because while email is getting less effective every year, it's still the best thing you've got. Even if only 30% of people are going to open your email, like that's a lot better than the 10% of people who are going to see your Facebook post. So build your list. Wherever you can. All of these people should be on all of each other's organizational lists, for example. You should all have pieces of paper or clipboards or whatever your tool is for getting people's lists. You should have an email sign up on your front page of your website just so that when you need to tell people things, you can tell more people those things. And some people are more comfortable giving you their email, some people are more comfortable friending you. It really depends. So you need to reach people where they are and where they're comfortable interacting with you. Yes?
What about texting on a network of cell phone?
Texting is the best, actually. If you can sit down and get like 10 people to each text, 10 people, those are the best response rates, no question. It's the hardest because you can't do group texts as easily, like it's challenging and data and messaging rates may apply, it's weird, but especially for young people, we are so much more likely to read and respond to a text than even a voicemail. So that's a good note. So this fundraising pyramid, it's also a marketing question. So what percentage of people who you reach out to can you expect to actually click that donate button? Most people observe that it's between 3 and 10%, depending on what you do in your list. So somewhere between 3 and 10% of people who see your stuff, but you didn't ask them directly, will give. Most of them will give in the 50 to 10 range. So if you assume that people will give an average of $30, and you know how many people are on your list, and you can multiply that by 5%, you can figure out how much your list is worth for this crowdfunding campaign. So you can figure out how much you can expect to raise. So let's say you have 1,000 people on your list. 5% of them are going to give an average of $30. 5% of 1,000 is 50. $30. 50 times 30. Math. $1,500. You can expect that your list is worth $1,500 for your crowdfunding campaign if you do it right. So that's a good way to understand what you can expect. Any questions?
This is a brilliant formula. Does that have a name?
No, I just learned it from like marketing people. Click-through rates on emails average in the 2% range for the nonprofit sector. More emails you send, lower click-through rate on average. So just know that.
So is
What do you mean? What are you
Facebook
saying?
So when I send an email, what percentage of people who have received the email in their inbox will click on a link? Open rates are more like 25 to 30%. MailChimp, you should use it. Costs a little bit of money if you have too many people on your list. Totally worth it. It'll tell you how many people are opening your email, how many people are clicking on what links. You can learn stuff. It lets you make nice looking emails. MailChimp. Yeah. Or like there's some free services that don't give you quite as many analytics, but they're free, so that's great. So
Who do you like?
I use MailChimp.
As far as free.
For free.
Google does a good job.
They do, but they don't let you track the results of your email campaigns. I would just Google free alternatives to MailChimp, look at a couple of marketer rating sites, and then choose the one that had the consistent high ratings.
So you said MailChimp?
MailChimp, yeah.
C-H-I-P or Chimp?
Chimp.
I-M-P.
MP, yeah.
Okay, and how much is that?
Depends on the size of your email list. I think we pay $80 a month for like 6,000 people. Under 500, I think it's free. So.
Did you say marketing evaluation websites?
So yeah, I would Google free alternatives to MailChimp, and then look for marketing websites that rate those things. I know I'm tired too. It's a lot of talking.
I heard that 45 days or less from another crowdfunding workshop that I went to are the ones that are usually successful. Would you agree with that?
And yes, correlation does not imply causation.
Right.
So people who have shorter crowdfunding campaigns tend to, on average, have done more work ahead of time. And more work ahead of time is clearly correlated with success.
And you personally, would you?
30.
30?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I can move on to another thing.
Something else, yeah.
And because the average amount of money raised is not higher as you go above 30. So I wanted to get back to why less than 30 is not great. I mean, some people have success with 20-day campaigns. Typically, they have very large networks. There's not really time, if you don't have a huge, really engaged network, for people to find out about your campaign in less than 30 days. So there's this concept in marketing called touches. You need multiple touches to get people. Most people won't click on a news story the first time they read it in their Facebook feed. Most people will click on a news story the third or fourth time they read it. If you see something on the front page of a paper as you pass by it in the grocery store, and then you see it once on Facebook, and then someone you're following tweets about it, most likely that second or third time is when you're actually going to access it. So under 30 days, you get a lot less opportunity for people who are fans of your project to actually ramp that up and get people seeing it multiple times in the digital space. So that's why I would recommend about 30 days. Also, the amount of money that you raise on average does go up until you hit 30 days. Data. There's a lot of data out there on this. Research it. Take a look. Take a deep look. Spend a week taking looks, because you will learn a lot. I think I'm going to take this opportunity, because we've got about 20 minutes left in this section. I'm going to take this opportunity to say a couple things about rewards. We offered a lot of rewards in our campaign. Fulfilling those rewards requires a lot of planning and a lot of work. It's very hard. For certain campaigns, it's a good idea. So if you have a bunch of people who have a lot of free time and some amount of crafting skill, and they can make rewards that cost very little money and just cost time for these people who are generous with their time anyway but don't really have money, then you should probably offer rewards, because people care about receiving something that's special and unique. If you would need to buy most of the rewards and then pay to ship them, you should really consider whether you need to offer rewards. Rewards are a great way of getting branded material out there into the world, so visibility is a real thing for you, like people knowing that you exist and seeing you out there. You should offer rewards, for example, because a radio station is only worth it if people know to tune to it. So definitely offer rewards. T-shirts are walking billboards. Tote bags are walking billboards. If you're doing a project that it doesn't matter so much if a bunch of people know about it after it's funded, maybe you don't need swag that people wear on them unless it makes them feel special. The purpose of a reward for a social justice campaign should probably be to make people who were going to show up on the website and give a certain amount of money give the next step up. That's how we thought about rewards, and we were very successful with our averages. We made our most common donation level was $50, which is not what you observe generally. And I think that a lot of that is because we offered a T-shirt at $50 and not under. A T-shirt is not worth $50. You should not buy $50 T-shirts. However, somebody who showed up on the website thinking, I'm going to give $20 or $25 and I'm going to get a T-shirt, will then have to make a decision. They'll have to say, am I going to get a T-shirt, or am I going to give $20 or $25? And a lot of those people will choose to give the $50 to get the T-shirt because that's what they wanted. So, in a more general way, not just T-shirts, I would recommend thinking about your rewards as a way of getting people to jump up that next step. So if somebody would expect a button for 5, make it 10. If somebody would expect a tote bag for 10, make it 20. Because you're not selling merchandise, you're raising money. So you shouldn't be married to strict fair market value of things. If you are selling merchandise, then you should sell it for something resembling the right amount. But if you're raising money for a cause, you should raise money for a cause and then graciously thank people with this thing that you made.
Do you have any sense of ratio between the value? Like if it costs you $20 to acquire, print, and ship a T-shirt, then what? Like you need 5 to 1, or what do you think is a good return on that $20 investment?
10 to 1 is what this woman Helen Kennedy, who has graciously joined our board of directors. She's like one of the top public radio fundraisers in the country. She says 10 to 1 is what you should have for rewards. That's hard, especially with shipping. That's hard to get to, so that should be your goal number. If you're doing better than 10 to 1 on rewards, it probably means you got it donated, or maybe you should consider offering a little more. Do the hard math. Do spreadsheets. Assume that a lot of people will choose the thing that is the most annoying for you to make. If you're going to offer a thing for $10 or $25, make sure that you can make 200 of it. Because if you can't make 200 of it, you shouldn't offer it at those levels. Because some people are willing to donate. There's a screen printer in this community that does the Occupy headband, bandanas, and the bees and stuff. Right, that's awesome. But imagine, and you can get X number for free. Let's say 10, 20 for free for your project. But you cannot expect a person to make 500 of those for free. And so, if that level is too popular, the cost of that level goes up. If you're getting things donated, don't try to get too many of them donated. We got almost all of our Kickstarter rewards donated, and it took us months to make that happen. And so we had a lot of people who were upset with us because we didn't give them their stuff soon enough. That's another thing, is have a plan to get people their stuff. That's important.
What about, I've seen some campaigns have certain things that they own as rewards that they only have 50 available or 20 available. And that seems to me like it would help pull in those early donors. Oh, if I put in my $50 now, then I can get a t-shirt. But if I don't, I might not get that t-shirt.
Yeah, early bird specials and stuff that have limited numbers are great ways of splitting that baby between wanting to offer this thing, but not being able to offer 1 million of this thing. We didn't personally use that strategy, but I've seen it work for a lot of people.
What about for a radio station though? Bumper stickers?
Bumper stickers are great.
Coffee mugs?
Mugs are okay. They tend to be very expensive to ship. We actually stopped offering mugs because they were costing us way too much money. Very expensive to print too. Anything that people walk around with or drive around with, where people will have the opportunity to tune to your radio station immediately when they see it, that's the thing you should be offering.
What's Helen's last name?
Kennedy.
Thank you.
She used to run Lewis Kennedy Consulting Services that helped build OPB into the member engagement behemoth that it is.
My project is to try to create a green wing of the Democratic Party. And there's a certain segment of people that automatically identify with that. So I see t-shirts, bumper stickers, like people saying, this is what I want to show my identity as. Is there anything else, or is it really come down to bumper stickers and t-shirts and buttons?
Things that show tribal affiliation are popular and good. Things that make statements about not about a thing, but about who I am as a person because I wear this thing. Like, here, this is my t-shirt. I have a t-shirt that shows Boba Fett frozen in carbonite. I bought this because my friend Simon made it, and because I'm a geek, and I like to show off that I'm a geek, and that makes me feel good. But I also like to show that I have taste, so it's not just a thing with text. It says things about me that I want to say. And so I bought it, even though it was twice as much as I would spend for a t-shirt. So yeah, you can get people to spend more and to donate more by giving them things that say things about them as a person.
You say in your experience mugs are generally not very profitable because it costs too much to get them produced?
And ship.
And
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like shipping them is man, like $5.
right.
It's crazy.
So you wouldn't recommend Pet Ross?
Hey, depending on the size of the rock, you can mail that stuff in an envelope. Anything you can mail in a first-class flat-rate envelope is a good reward. Tote bags, for example. Great reward.
How about scarves with your radio?
Great. Yeah. More people will use tote bags as a rule, so I tend to prefer those, but scarves are great too. Patches. Things that people can display their affiliation with. Any other questions about rewards or marketing?
What about intangible rewards? We've done crowdfunding for our daughter's pre-professional ballet training and summer intensives, which are really expensive. And a lot of the rewards have been for like, okay, for $5 we'll thank you publicly on the Facebook page. You know, for something we'll send you a video of, a video of her dancing. For $100 she'll choreograph 2 minutes of dance for you.
So opinions differ. I am learning to be on the side of there's a split in the community about this. If you make it more expensive for people to be publicly acknowledged as a part of your campaign, you will receive fewer donations and they will be of higher value. Whether you make more money overall is an open question, and it'll depend on your campaign. Intangible rewards that are personal from me to you, that are like, I do this for you specifically, and it has your name on it, and it shows love and care, awesome. Do not make too many of those. You will go crazy. I made like 40 hand-selected vinyl tote bags, so tote bags with vinyl records in them that were all hand-curated by our music directors to match the tastes that I surveyed the people who had asked for those things. I will never do it. At least I would double the price because all of that is going to take a lot of time. But acknowledging people on Facebook and stuff, totally. If in your head you think that should be a $1 thing, make it a $5 thing. Other questions about rewards and stuff? No? Cool. We're about on time. Last subject is follow-up. Follow-up and engagement of the community. This is how you can turn something good into something incredible, or something that didn't actually work out into a successful crowdfunding campaign later. A lot of people fail the first time they try to raise money for a thing. That stinks. But what they've gotten is dozens, hundreds, in very rare cases, thousands of people who have already decided they care enough about this thing to put their money into it. Those people are gold. You should love those people and send them emails and write little thank you cards to them and send them smiley-laden text messages and keep those relationships alive, even if your crowdfunding campaign fails. Anybody who offered to give you money is like your best friend, and they should be, because the next time you launch that crowdfunding campaign, they will spread the word better, give the same amount or more, and get other people involved. So failed crowdfunding campaigns don't have to be the death of a project. They can just be, oh wow, we didn't actually think about that hard enough and we need to work again and do more work. The Coolest Cooler is the best example of this. Have any of you heard of this? These Portland guys, they made a cooler that has a blender and a ceramic knife inside and like an iPod charger and speakers, and it's like this crazy like midlife crisis, like suburban white dude toy.
What does that mean?
It's a cooler, like an ice chest.
Ice chips, yeah.
And it has a refrigeration unit in it. It's got this powerful battery. It's crazy.
Take a bird
Separates.
to the beach.
So they failed their first crowdfunding campaign. Only by a little bit, but they failed. Second time around, because of some very good groundwork, because of excellent PR management, because of like really getting their game together, they became the most funded crowdfunding campaign in history a year later. So it doesn't have to be the death of you. if a crowdfunding campaign fails. And that's another reason why I like all or nothing crowdfunding, because the people who offered to give you that money are way more likely to come back to you if you didn't then take their money and were unable to do the thing that you said you'd do. So you can go back to them later. They are still a precious resource.
So, how much time should you plan if you failed to go back and try it again?
Good question. It depends. At least 6 months. Most people who succeed afterwards do a year of work. But I think that I would consider 6 months to really be the minimum.
So what if you have, let's say, a phone bank where you're communicating besides email or whatever with your membership, and they've already given, but then you come up with this crowdfunding campaign. Is it like permissible to go back to, those people who?
Definitely. The people who have already given you money are the people most likely to give you money in the future.
Right.
Most people do not give to their capacity, and being not embarrassed about asking people for money, as long as you're polite and good and talking about why this matters, and accept for the most part their excuses when they give you excuses and say, oh, I can't because of this and this, you're not going to break any trust. As long as that's followed up with a, hey, thank you for your time, I totally appreciate what you've already done for us.
Right.
So don't be afraid to ask people for money. Generally, do not be afraid to ask people for money, because as long as you're good about it, as long as you value the relationship outside of the exchange of money, you're offering people the opportunity to be involved in a small way in something beautiful and powerful. You're giving people an opportunity to feel like they have built a thing, especially if that thing didn't exist before, from the ground up. They are the bedrock of this movement, and you should constantly remind them of that.
Well, one thing we're concerned about with our daughter, every summer she has to do another summer ballet intensive. This is when we work on meeting with professional potential. And we have a lot of the same people we keep going to. This will be like our 3rd year. We're concerned about people out.
So there are some strategies that have been effective. House parties. This is getting kind of into the weeds, but get 1 or 2 people to say yes to inviting all of their friends over to their house, with the understanding that their friends are going to be asked for money to support this project. Anybody who says yes to that invitation has given you permission to ask them for money. So as long as you get the person to do the really hard work of filling that room with 15 people, 20 people, and then you do the really hard work of creating a presentation and talking to people in a way that's worthy of their time and energy, you can get pretty generous people because you've pre-selected that group for people who are willing to be asked for money.
But a broader sense of like, we're not wanting to do the exact same thing. There is something that the people who've been supporting our daughter, and it's mostly this is the province of rich people. They won't get their kids to that level, or else people are really dedicated. They see her progress. Each year she's gotten a lot better.
Make a video and highlight a new donor in this community. Someone who you've never asked for money before who said yes this year. In your position, that's what I would do.
You mean put the actual donor on the video saying,
Yep.
I've been watching this girl for 3 years. It's amazing to see her growth. She just did this incredible role, and really feel great about supporting her.
One thing I've learned in school, I'm not sure if you agree with this, but they say is to try to make 2 contacts before you make another ask. So whether it's just an update or just a thank you note, but just try not to make every contact is, I like your money again, or will you give me more money? So make sure you're following up with them in between. And they say recommend 2 times, although not everyone sticks with that. You can make
3 is better.
3.
Two is great. 2 is good. We don't succeed at 2 at X-Ray yet. We're new. We have to ask for a lot of money all the time. But 3 is better. And so what do contacts look like? Contacts look like emails, phone calls, letters, a video. One of the few things that you can actually sell to people who are being a part of this social movement is contact. is human warmth and relationship and the access to inside information into the thing. So if you want to be very popular with your donors, set up a potluck where you just invite them all over and talk about how things are going and don't ask them for money. It's a lot of work, but it'll make your next ask much more effective.
So in the long term, let's say that you want to go back to these folks for further projects later on in the future, and your concern is maintaining that friendship, maintaining that contact. How much resources, let's say that you're publicly funded, stuff like that, how much of your resources from your first ask do you conserve so that you continue to do outreach, stuff like that?
Good question. I don't have a good answer for that, actually. We're still figuring that out, and I don't know anyone who has it down pat. I would expect, if I had to guess, 10% of operating budget for maintaining donor outreach after the first year. That would be a guess, though. So my organization would expect to spend $30,000 on that, which sounds about right. Yeah, so if you have under like 1,000 or so donors, you should be tracking, like with people's names on a spreadsheet or something, how many times you've reached out to each individual person. And maybe that's an email, so you just get to check everybody's box all at the same time. But you can track these touches in a way that makes you know, oh, I've like reached out to this person 3 times without asking them for money. I should totally ask them for money. Well, we're gonna break for lunch here. I want to answer any questions that people might forget while they're eating.
And I'd be happy to share with the group an experience of a successful campaign that's in many ways quite different than the ordinary that you're speaking of. Because one thing most of the sites offer is teams. So if there are 40 of you that are together trying to raise this, you can each be a team. And you're kind of individually running your own campaign, but all the money goes into the big campaign.
Interesting. So it's a way of tracking fundraising plans, essentially.
It's hard to explain in a moment, but in my experience, 40 people across the country that had very little, they had a particular connection. And they each ran a campaign under the same banner, and under the same organization. None of them raised more than about $6,000, and some raised 25 or 50. But the total, we raised $150,000.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that more.
But one general comment I'd like to make, we have seen more success than we could have ever imagined in the last year. And a lot of other groups that are doing essentially what we do always ask us, like, how are you getting money from people and how have you grown so much? And we try to stay really transparent through social media. And I think that people can really see exactly where their money's going and can really see how we run and operate, even if they've never been there to volunteer and never donated. So just as like a general advice, social media has been a huge tool for us, and I think we get so much of our money purely from it. We used Indiegogo. They take, I think, 4%. This campaign we're running now is You Caring, and it's free.
What is it?
You Caring.
You caring?
What I would say in general about that is when you're choosing a platform, like the difference between 0% and 9% on a $2,000 campaign is $180, and so if that's like a really important $180, then that should be a real consideration, but it should be weighed against other considerations.
That led to another question. How do you decide between different platforms, and do you recommend going with bigger, more popular platforms?
Yeah.
You know, the go-go factor.
It
go-go talks about versus
it adds
small nobody's
legitimacy.
Legitimacy.
Yeah. In my opinion. And also native search traffic on those websites. So when people go to that website and are just like looking around and they see something that catches their eye, it accounts for about 5% of donations, which covers the cost of using that platform.
With our daughter, one of those people that was one of those 5% wound up donating almost $10,000 in the course of a few years.
Yeah. That
and
is,
then passed away.
that's a success story.
Yeah, amazing.
Besides Kickstarter, who would you recommend?
Indiegogo is also good. Razoo exists, but I think they have more stringent requirements for who goes on their site. If you're doing a recurring thing, Patreon is pretty cool if you're willing to make videos on a regular basis, because that allows for monthly donations.
WeShare is a new one.
Yeah, WeShare. It's a free one. I haven't really looked into it much. For those of you who are leaving, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.